Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into a real Netflix-level medical mystery. We're going to explore the hidden biology of why modern work environments are quite literally rewiring our neurobiology, altering our metabolic health, and even changing how we age. We are pulling back the curtain on the deep science of sleep optimization, nervous system regulation, and the severe biological cost of chronic stress. Let's get into it. Okay, let's start with a highly counterintuitive but incredibly common lived experience. You know the exact feeling we're talking about. You finished a totally grueling day, your physical and mental batteries are just completely drained, and yet, the second your head hits the pillow, boom, you're wide awake. You are tired but wired. So why does profound exhaustion actually trigger insomnia instead of deep restorative sleep? Well, scientists call this the recovery paradox. And to truly understand it, we need to take a look at the deeply interconnected systems inside your brain. To crack this paradox, we have to look under the hood at your body's internal cybernetic loop. You see, when you experience stress, your body doesn't just feel overwhelmed on an emotional level. It literally kicks off a massive neuroendocrine cascade. This whole response is governed by a beautifully coordinated dance between your sympathetic nervous system, which is what gives you that immediate jolt of adrenaline, and a deeper, slower system known as the HPA axis. Here is exactly what is happening on a cellular level. It's basically a domino effect. First, your brain perceives a threat. That stimulates a tiny region in your hypothalamus called the PVN to secrete a chemical called CRH. That chemical then knocks over the next domino, triggering your pituitary gland to release ACTH, which finally signals your adrenal cortex to pump glucocorticoids, primarily cortisol, straight into your bloodstream. Now, this is a brilliant evolutionary survival mechanism, but it becomes incredibly destructive when it just never turns off. Now, think about the stark contrast between a healthy rhythm and a stressed one. In a healthy, biologically balanced state driven by your normal circadian clock, your cortisol drops to its absolute lowest point. It's nadir around midnight and then peaks rapidly in the morning to wake you up. But under chronic stress, this entire rhythm gets completely dysregulated. You develop glucocorticoid receptor resistance, your nighttime cortisol stays elevated, and biologically speaking, high cortisol literally acts as a somnolytic, an anti-sleep agent, completely shattering your sleep architecture and blocking you from entering that crucial restorative slow-wave sleep. We can actually see this play out most dramatically in the extreme environment of shift workers. Because their work hours directly clash with their natural circadian biology, their normal cortisol rhythm is just shattered. Research shows evening cortisol levels in night shift workers hit a staggering 9.4 micrograms per deciliter. Compare that to just 3.74 in fixed day shift workers. It's nearly triple. This severe circadian misalignment keeps the brain bathed in an alertness signal exactly when it's supposed to be powering down. And the crucial point here is that this resulting sleep fragmentation isn't just making you feel groggy the next day. It is driving a systemic metabolic fallout. When your HPA axis is hyperactive and your sleep is wrecked, you experience decreased vagal tone, reduced heart rate variability, and sympathetic dominance. Basically, your nervous system is locked in fight-or-flight mode. This cascades into elevated glucose and insulin and suppresses a vital hormone called adiponectin, which drastically accelerates your vulnerability to obesity, type 2 diabetes, and coronary heart disease. Now, you might be sitting there thinking, well, I don't work night shifts, so I'm safe from all of this, right? But what if you work a standard 9 to 5? Why is your HPA axis still firing cortisol at midnight when your office has been closed for hours? Let's shift our perspective for a second and uncover a hidden, microscopic mechanism that is happening in the brain of almost every modern knowledge worker right this very second. Enter the ghost stressor. Scientifically, this is known as perturbative cognition, or PC. When you leave your physical workplace, the objective stressors, your boss, the emails, the deadlines, they are physically gone. But through worry and rumination, your brain repetitively reactivates the cognitive representation of those stressors. Your amygdala actually doesn't know the difference between a real physical threat and an imagined one, so it tricks your HPA axis into believing that the threat is right there, physically present in your bedroom. And the data on this is mind-blowing. A massive meta-analysis looking at over 3,700 individuals revealed that this perseverative cognition accounts for roughly 40% of the total association between stress and sleep disturbance. Think about that mediation effect. It tells us that almost half of your stress-induced insomnia isn't even coming directly from your environment, but from how your brain is rehearsing that environment. This is a massive paradigm shift in how we understand stress.
It is not the actual volume of emails or the physical deadlines that are ruining your deep, slow-wave sleep. It's the fact that your brain continues to actively synthesize them as active threats long after you've clocked out. People who worry about stress exhibit far, far worse sleep quality than those who experience high stress but manage to just leave it at the door.
So ultimately, you're caught in one of two loops. If you ruminate, you're trapped in a vicious, pathological feed-forward cycle. Stress causes cortisol release, which fragments your sleep. Those nighttime awakenings cause further autonomic arousal, leading to more cortisol and then even more stress. But if you can psychologically detach, you engineer a virtuous loop. You establish parasympathetic dominance, which opens the door for deep, slow-wave sleep, and that in turn builds incredible emotional and metabolic resilience for the very next day.
Section 1. Macro-organizational dynamics, the job demands resources model.
To systematically reverse this hyperarousal, we really have to zoom out and look at the macro environment. In any job, there are two intersecting realities at play. On the one side, high job demands deplete your energy and activate your HPA axis, leading directly to exhaustion. But on the flip side, job resources, things like task autonomy, constructive feedback, and supervisor support, act as literal biological buffers. They mitigate the physical strain of those heavy demands, bringing down your physiological arousal so you can actually detach and recover when you go home. What this means is that organizations have the immense power to directly regulate their employees' autonomic nervous systems through structural interventions. We're talking about simple but profound changes, enforcing 55-minute meetings to guarantee a 5-minute transition space, designing forward-facing shift schedules that actually respect human circadian biology, eliminating brutal clopening shifts, setting hard digital decoupling policies. These things can dramatically lower collective stress levels across the board. Which brings us nicely to the concept of detachment. Researcher Dalia Etzion perfectly summarizes it as the individual sense of being away from the work situation. Because here's the truth, it is biologically impossible to recover if you're physically sitting on your couch at home, but cognitively or digitally you're still answering messages. Your body might be at home, but your nervous system is very much still at the office. Groundbreaking recovery science, specifically utilizing the Recovery Experience Questionnaire by Sonnettag and Fritz, proves that mentally switching off isn't just some nice, fluffy self-care idea, it is the single strongest predictor of recovery. It is a strict, non-negotiable physiological prerequisite for dropping into the parasympathetic state that you absolutely need to initiate sleep.
Section 2. Clinical Behavioral Solutions. Autogenic Training.
But let's be real for a second. What if your nervous system is already stuck in overdrive and you just cannot simply choose to detach? Well, this is where targeted behavioral solutions become game changers. In a remarkable prospective cohort study at the Royal London Hospital, patients went through an 8-week autogenic training course. The results were astounding. Patients significantly decreased the time it took to fall asleep, they fell back asleep quicker if they woke up in the middle of the night, and they woke up feeling highly energized. They even showed massive improvements in clinical anxiety and depression. And here's the absolute wildest part. The training didn't even focus directly on sleep. This data tells us a profoundly important story. When you treat the root cause, the chronic anxiety, the rumination, and that resulting HPA axis hyperactivation, restorative sleep naturally follows as a byproduct. Behavioral approaches like autogenic training literally teach the nervous system how to power down. They effectively break that feed-forward loop of cortisol and allow your innate healthy circadian biology to successfully reemerge. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a direct biological challenge. Now that you know your cognitive representation of work acts as a ghost stressor, dumping cortisol into your system and destroying your sleep architecture, what structural boundary are you going to build tonight? How will you definitively signal to your nervous system that the day is truly over so you can finally reclaim your deep sleep, your metabolic health, and your longevity?